Okay, so I've worn out one of my Farriers knives, one I use every day. You can see how thin it's got, and the hook has virtually completely worn out and gone, so it's pretty much useless. If you can see that. Now, ordinarily, I'd just nip down the my normal Farrier suppliers and buy a new one, but they can rush you from sort of 30 quid up to sort of 70 quid. So while I've got a couple of hours, I thought I'll actually try and take these rivets out and see if I can replace the blade in the handle. So it might work, it might not. Let's give it a go, see what happens. Alright, I've got this bit of spring steel. It's just a bit of straightened coil spring. I used it on several other jobs. I have no idea how much I'm going to need, so I'm going to start with this bit, which is about, I don't know, 6 inches long, something like that. We'll see how we get on. Start with a big hammer, because I've got to flatten this right out down to a sort of probably, I don't know, less than 1/8 anyway. So I'm going to give it some beans, see if we can thin her right down. Don't know how thick it is, probably 332, something like that. Just under 1/8 anyway. Just enough to go in the wooden handle. Now, once you get this quite thin, it cools down really rapidly, and you don't want to be working it cold. So I'm going to find another pair of tongs, see if we can turn it round, hold the thin bit, and draw the other end out. So I don't know quite how much I'm going to need, so I'm just going to draw this whole lot out and then cut off what I don't need. See, there's quite a lot of scale comes off this. Not quite sure why, but it's pretty scaly. Let's try and level it up a bit. We're getting there, but still need quite a bit more thinned down. That's the width I want to try and achieve, so it fills up the slot, but if it doesn't, it's no biggie, you know, as long as I've got enough to put the rivets through. I've moved on to the smaller hammer. Thin this down a bit more. See if it's anywhere near yet. It's getting there. Don't know if we'll quite make the exact width, but it'll be pretty close. And that was a bit of 1/2 inch, I think. I think it was 1/2 inch or 12mm, something like that. Now moved on to the smaller hammer yet again. A bit more control with the smaller one. Still need a bit more out the middle there. Just seeing how thin I need to make it. Quite a bit more, I think. Basically in the middle, I think. So it heats up quick, but it cools down just as quick. Keep thinning that out. Hopefully we'll achieve the width that we want to go into the handle. I'm just going to turn it round and draw that end out again, because that's still quite thick comparatively. drawing this end thinner as well as, or narrower as well as thinner, because that's the bit I'm going to use for the blade. Obviously the blade isn't anywhere near that sort of dimension, so I might as well make it narrower now whilst I've got it in the forge. I say these knives, they can be quite expensive. You can buy real cheap ones for sort of 25-30 quid, but the quality's not there and they just don't last. Right, I've got a mark on here roughly how long I want it, and that's way too long, so I think I'm going to have to cut a bit off of there, and then you can go and spend up to sort of 70 quid for one made by a name, you know, one of the top farriers puts his name to it, and I don't think it's really any much better, but because it's got his name to it, it's probably going to last you a bit longer, because he's going to use a bit better steel, but I can't justify paying sort of 60 or 70 quid just to clean a bit of muck out of a foot. Right, so now I've cut all that off, that I've wasted my time flattening out, I'll flatten out what's left. I should have done a bit of calculations and cut the steel down in the first place, but it was just a bit I got kicking about. I hadn't cut it off specially. It was sort of just lying around on my little shelf by the forge. I'd obviously thought I was going to do something with it. I think I was going to make a punch with it, but never did. Just thinning and narrowing as we go. Just have a look, see how much. Yeah, still going to be quite long, but I'm just working out where I need to set it down. I'm just making a little mark there so that I can just thin it out. That's the bit that's sort of just out of the handle, where it starts to come down into the blade. Now you'll notice I'm leaving the very end a little bit wider, and that's on purpose, because when you make the hook, if you narrow it right the way down and sort of in a taper, when you bend the hook, which is I'm just describing now, it will be too small when you bend it back on itself. So you leave that end a little bit wider, so that when you bend it back on itself, it's sort of similar thickness or width to the bit of metal that it's up against, if you see what I mean. Well, you'll see what I mean when I do it, but that's why I'm doing that. It's starting to get like a bar of soap, this bit. It's flying about all over the place. So I think it's still a little bit wide. No, a little bit thick. Get me thicks and me wides mixed up. It does need to taper in all directions, really. Now I think I'm still going to be too long. I think I'm going to have to cut some more off, you know. It's still way too long. I think we'll cut a bit more off, and yeah, definitely cut a bit more off, and then start again. Well, not start again, but you know, just whip that off. Sorry, I should have moved the camera, but you can tell what I'm doing. I'm just whipping the end off. that bit. Right, let's do it again. So we'll thin that bit out again, and again leave that very end. Let's have a look now, see if we're long enough. That's better, we're getting there now. Don't know what Millie's barking at. She's obviously heard something out the front. Alright, again, narrowing it and thinning it, but leaving that very end. I will have to grind a lot of this out anyway, so I suppose I could have sort of left it a bit, but it's funny when you're used to forging stuff, it's difficult to go to just grinding stuff. I don't know. I suppose it's a force of habit. I've always forged stuff, so I tend to get things as close as I can by forging. And grinding was, when I was a boy, it was just the final touches. But nowadays, people do everything by grinding. But so I'm sort of doing a bit of both. Right, I think I'm going to leave it at that. Let that cool down so it sort of slightly anneals, and then we'll draw around it and grind it out to get the basic shape. So whilst that's happening, whilst it's cooling down, I'll just put a centre pop in each of these rivets. I'm just going to try and drill them out. I have no idea how big the rivets are, so I just guessed with this, I think it's 532 drill I've put in here. Let's see if we can get them out. I don't know how they're fixed because they're sort of blank both ends, so we'll see. That one's going right through. Yeah, look at that. Comes straight out. So I chose the right sort of size, I reckon. Roughly. Right, let's see if I can pull that one out. No, it's a bit too tight to come out by hand. I'll see if I can go and knock it out, I think. Right, so we've got knock the rivets out. Let's see if I can get it out. But actually it's still attached somehow. Yeah, I don't know if you can see. That's the bottom of it is obviously still got a bit of a shaft left on it. I thought it was just the head that was stuck in the bottom, but here we go. That's it. I think that was, I don't know, there might be some more in there. Have a little look. Yeah, there's a little bit of the shaft left in there. Obviously the drill was just that fraction under, and it's gone right the way down the centre, surprisingly. And it's just left a tiny sort of sleeve almost. I don't know if you can see it, if I can get... No, you probably can't see it. It's just a tiny, tiny sliver. Can't get the damn thing out. That's it, I think that's... Yeah, there it goes. That's it. That's a tiny, tiny little sliver. Right, so this should drop out now. There we go. So that I'm going to use as the pattern for, obviously, the replacement. But this is going to be a bit thicker or wider. We'll put that set in it after we've shaped it. So this isn't going to focus unless I zoom out a bit. Don't know if you can see, it's just under the size we wanted. So it's no big deal. I probably could have hammered it out a little bit wider, but I'm not bothered. You know, I can mark on these, mark in there where I want it, and then grind it out. Then we'll put the bends in. As I say, I'm not too worried about the width of it, because I can always grind the handle down if necessary. So I've quickly chalked on here the bits I want to cut off and grind out. So let's give it a go. I'm just going to whip the end off. Right, that's the end. And now I'll try grinding it. Got a nice fresh grinding wheel, proper grinding wheel, not a flat disc. And it's chattering like mad, so that's why I'm holding on to it. Well, you can see how much it's chattering. Let's get that back bit off. Yeah, that's really... I'm going to have to put that in the vise the other way around, I think. Make life easier. Actually, if I put it the other way, you can see if I chalk it again, because it's sort of come off. Give it a quick line where I want it. Not actually working very well, so let's get the Sharpie out. Let's roughly draw. It's only rough, it's just give me an idea. That's better, I can see it now. Alright, so we'll have that out with the grinder. That's better. It's funny, you forget, having using flat discs virtually all the time these days, you forget how a proper grinder can really tear the material off. Proper wheel. Obviously it's not going to get into that radius properly, but that's got the worst of it off. Let's see if the flat disc will do anything. Although I could actually do with a new disc on here that's pretty much had it, this one. It's, yeah, not particularly up to much. I think what we'll do, yeah, that's still cool enough to hold on to. That's got the worst of it, so what we're going to do, we'll pop over to the belt grinder and have a go on that. Seeing as I've made it, I might as well try using it, because that disc has had it. Right, see how we get on with this. I'm finding that I'm using this grinder much more than I anticipated I would. I'll do a little job and I think, oh, I know, I'll use that grinder, and it's actually working out pretty well. I must get some new belts for it though. I'm still running these cheap ones that I bought when I built it, and although they do the job, they're not really up to much. So I'm just going to check to see exactly what I need to do, because there isn't really well, say a bevel, it's not really a bevel, it's sort of a semicircle. It's sort of flat on the inside edge and sort of rounded on the outside edge, but it's not exactly one or the other. It's sort of a mixture of both. It's a difficult cross section to describe. You really need to sort of when you've got an old knife, if you've got a broken one or whatever. Hang on, what am I looking for now? Oh yeah, I'm going to use a bit of wood on here, I think. See if that helps. Yeah, if you've got an old knife you've broken or whatever, cut it in half or cut it across the cross section and see what it looks like. Oh, that made me jump. Wood dropped off. Because it's quite a bizarre cross section. So I'm going to do quite a bit of it on the flat here, and then I'm going to go on to the slack bit of the belt. But I'm trying to get sort of the worst of it, so I'm getting the meat of it off, and then I can really do the profiling. On the other bit, just checking again. Make sure I'm going far enough in each direction and which side I need to be doing what on. Although this belt sander is very useful, it's a pain in the backside. It's always in the way. I've got it right on the end of my bench and I have to keep pulling it forward when I want to use it and pushing it back when I don't, and I keep banging myself on it when I go around the corners, and I really do need a bigger workshop, but don't know as I can justify it for the amount of time I'm in here, which actually isn't a lot. Now this bit is getting a little bit laborious. I might just speed this little bit up and come back to it. Okay, so I think I've got the basic shape right now. Let's see if I can get this camera to focus. No, it's not going to, is it? I'm going to have to... Come on, focus. No, I think if I zoom out it might focus a bit quicker or a bit easier. Come on, alright. I don't know if you can't really see there the shape I've got on it. So we've got that far. The next thing we've got to do is try and bend it. So we'll stick it up in the vise, we'll get it warm, stick it up in the vise and give it a whack. So I've warmed it up and cooled it out in the appropriate place. Of course I can't see my chalk mark now. I put a chalk mark on it where I needed to bend it, and of course it's now gone stone cold again. I don't really want to hit it too hard while it's cold in case it just snaps and I lose all that I've done. But yeah, it definitely needs quite a bit more. So let's get it warm again. Do it again. This time we'll give it a tap. That might be enough. Have a little look. Try it up against the original. Yeah, that's pretty good, I think. It's a bit longer than the other one, so the blade starts a little bit later, but hey ho, I'm not going to worry about that. So now we've got that bend in, we've got to bend it the other way. And you can see how it's so thin, you hardly have to tap it. But it's difficult to see, it's not actually round. It's got a sort of a flat bit on the bottom, and it's obviously been designed that way for the shape of the foot, because the sole is fairly flat actually, so I'm guessing that's been, you know, over a long period of time they've developed it to get the right shape. But it's pretty tricky to try and get, because again it's cooling out really quickly, so it's difficult to get exactly how we want it. Still, slow and steady, persevere, and again, don't let it get too cold and try and hit it, otherwise I think it could well snap. I'm not sure how pliable it is at this stage. You can see I'm not getting it all that hot, just hot enough to give it a little tweak here and there. Almost there, I think. Don't think it's going to be far out. We're almost there, and then we've got to hook the end over. I'm going to use a little pair of sort of tongs. No, not really tongs. I've got a little pair of needle nose plier things, but as per usual I can't find the bloody thing, so I'm going to have to use my scrolling tongs. Now I'm using the gas torch because it's just so thin, and you want to get the heat in the right place. You could probably heat this up with one of those little gas propane, or you know, whatever they are, butane, like a soldering torch, because it is so thin on that end comparatively. You just get too hot in the wrong places if you did it in the forge. Now I think you can get the idea of why I left that end thick, or wider. There we are, got me wides and me thicks right. You'll see it in a minute when I turn it round. I'm just giving it a little tweak, try and keep it parallel. Alright, let's see if I can show you it, if I can get it out without burning myself. Right, there's the hook. I can't really see very well, it's not focusing. And there, when I turn it that way, you'll see what I mean about the thickness, or the width. So it's about the same as the blade behind it now. Right, that's the shape, which is a peculiar shape, but as I say, it's obviously been developed over time. So I guess the next thing we've got to do is put the holes in for the handle. Actually, that's cooled down already. See how quickly that cools down. So we'll mark it. I'll put it in the handle, give it a mark, or spot it, and then we'll dress it up a bit. Little jollop, drop a jollop. Now this is still really hard. I haven't actually annealed this, so I'm surprised if it's going to go through at all. Surprised it's got as far as it has, to be honest. That's why it'll squeal like crazy. Oh, now that one went through, which I was surprised at. This one's not going to, is it? No. It's almost there. I can see it coming through the back, but no, can't get it to bite on that edge. No. No, that's going to take the edge off the drill. Right, what I'm going to have to do is quickly sharpen the drill and yeah, that's taking the edge off. Let's just quickly give it a sharpen up. Alright, as if by magic, giving it a quick sharpen up. Hopefully we just have enough edge on it now to punch it through. Yeah, just. There you go. So, I've cleaned up that edge. Oh, it's not focusing again. Blooming thing. You see, I've just cleaned it up just to make it a fairly uniform thickness to go into the handle. And I've just taken the scale off some of the blade. I guess now we've got to heat treat it. So I'm going to harden this up, get it up to non-magnetic, and then I've got my tub of oil down here. So I'm sort of leaning over from the outside of the fire really. I'm actually almost standing outside. I don't want the blade itself to get overly hot. Let it come up fairly slowly. You don't want to get it up too hot. Sort of almost soak it a little bit, which is difficult because it's so thin. It's quite difficult to sort of get it hot slowly. But I'm just going to keep moving it around a bit. That must be almost there, I reckon. It's not looking bad. Let's just try it on the magnet. Yeah, non-magnetic. Straight in the oil. Keep it moving so that the oil doesn't heat up around it. That lovely black gooey mess. If I did more of this, I'd invest in some proper oil. I just use old engine oil because, well, there you go. Right, let's see if a file will touch it. No, look at that. Whew, hard as. I reckon if I drop that on the floor, that'd shatter. So, I'm going to clean off the back so it's nice and shiny, so we can see the colours coming through. Right, I've cleaned it up. I've just run it across the belt sander to get the colours off, and I'm just using this torch. This is the sort of thing you could have probably bent the end over with because it's just so thin. So I'm just going to gently run it up and down till I start to see the colours coming. Don't spend too much time in one place, but obviously work on the thicker part first because it will run down to the thinner part. You just see it starting to come now. So I want to get back on the thinner bit. Don't want to get the... There we go, look at that, it's gone pretty quick. That's browny purple, that's about right. So, call that out at that. Let's see what happens now. Go and clean it up a bit. Get that oil off. Right, so I've cleaned it up. You can see I've sort of polished it and put a bit of an edge on. There's not much of one. It will... Oh, of course it's not attached, is it? So I've got to hold on to it. It will cut card, you know, relatively easily, but I will have to put a slightly better edge on, I think, than that. But that's, for now, that's good enough. So now I've got to find some rivets. Now I've got some copper rivets lying around somewhere. It's just a question of finding them. So I'm going to have a quick look around, see if I can find them, because I know they're here somewhere. Well, I've searched for ages, I can't find them, so I'm going to try and rivet it with some bits of welding rod, because I haven't got any rivets thin enough, and I just can't. I've got some aluminium ones somewhere as well, and I can't find them. I think they might be just long enough. So we're just going to see if we can peen these over a bit. They're not going all that well. I guess, see, I can't really heat them up because of the wood, and they're not going well at all. No, they've gone completely pissy-eyed really. They've sort of bent over, and I don't like that. I'm going to see if I can grind them off and get them out, because I don't like them. I can start again, I think, with that. Right, well, I've made a complete balls up now. Tried to get them out, couldn't, and I've ended up splitting the blasted handle. Look at that big split right down it. So I'm completely fed up with that now. This has taken way too long anyway. I feel like just chucking it in the bin and going out and buying one, but let's get this one off. Let's sorted that out. I might, I don't know what to do. I might end up making a handle like I did on my first Farriers knife, but I really wanted to try and can't even get that off now. I really wanted to try and repair this one. Right, I found another one. Another old broken one. I wish this camera would focus. Focus, focus, focus. So I'm going to see if I can carefully take this one apart, and we'll have another go. Alright, so I've got it apart, and I've had to drill the holes out a little bit bigger because they're not in quite the right place, and I can't find my other rivets, so I'm going to use pop rivets. I know it's not the right thing. I'm just going to put a little washer on the back to try and sort of stop it pulling through. It's the job is getting on my nerves now. You know, it's one of those, if it hasn't gone right, I just want it finished. So I'll get this old pop gun. This has seen better days as well, but I can't be bothered to get my big one out. This one should do it. Yep, it's pulling up. Hope the washer stays on there. Give it a good hold. It should go pop in a minute. There we go. That's got it. But I don't think the washer's stayed on. No, it hasn't. Look at that. Bloody... why do I bother? Let's try it with that one. It's so annoying because I know I've got some real nice copper rivets somewhere that would have done this a treat. I just can't find them. Nearly there. I think this one's just pulling into the wood. That's got it. Right, let's have a look at that one. Yeah, the washer hasn't gone on that one either. It's just half on, half off. That was a waste of time. Anyway, it's gone tight. They're on. They stick out a little bit, but I don't think they'll get in the way. I can hammer them back into the knife a little bit. So I'm just going to clean it up top and bottom where it doesn't fit properly. There's a little bit of an edge there where it's sticking out. I don't know if you can see that. That's what I would have liked on both sides, and then I could grind it back, but the top edge there doesn't. That's where it's not flush, but I don't care about that. Right, so let's see if we can give it a bit of a clean up. I might fill those holes up with something because I just don't like them. Anyway, give it a clean up. I'll come back in a minute. Okay, so it's done, but it's not particularly practical. As proof of concept, it's worked, but it's taken me forever. I filled in those holes in the back with a bit of sort of instant metal stuff. I haven't got any oil or wax with me, so I'm going to take it home, give it a wax up. And unfortunately I haven't got a horse to hand, so I can't try it, but that is nice and sharp. So I'm just hoping I've got the angle right that it will work. So I'll try it out next week and I'll let you know how I get on. But I may have been better off doing what I did originally with my original hoof knife, was just making a blade any old how, and then making a handle rather than trying to refit an old handle. I say it's worked, but it would have been much quicker to have made myself a handle out of either this plastic or another lump of wood. So there you go, you live and learn. But it saved me a few quid, even though it's taken me a lot of time. I wasn't doing anything else this afternoon, so there you go, we'll give it a go, see what happens. So I'll show you later on once I get home and give it a wax. Okay, so we got it home and I've given it a bit of a wax up. I don't know if you can't really see that, it's in this light, but it's waxed anyway, and it feels much nicer now. It's got a good smooth finish, and the rivets don't interfere. I don't feel them anyway. Will get in the way. So I'm hoping it will do the trick. As I say, won't really be able to find out until next week when I start doing a horse, but it's way sharper than that needs to be for shoeing horses. That is, well, like you can see. So hopefully it'll do the job. And this spring steel really does hold an edge well. That other knife I showed earlier, the one with the white handle that I made, I don't know how long ago, it's probably the best knife I've got now because it just holds an edge. So I'm hoping that this will do the same. So we'll give it a go next week, and I'll let you know how I get on. Thanks for watching.